So Don Lemon apparently is battling the Department of Justice. This is wild. I didn't believe it at first, but it's true. Apparently, the DOJ is trying to charge Don Lemon with basically doing journalism. I'm going to show you what this is, regardless of how you feel about this subject. I am very concerned about the Justice Department going after people covering stories that they don't feel is, good for them. And he wasn't the only journalist covering this. So long story short, there were a group of protesters protesting in Minneapolis, Minnesota against ICE. They decided to take that protest to a pastor at a church who they say is an ICE agent. And that's where Don Lemon comes in. Let's get started with this part here first. Midas Cherie says he looks terrified that his mask has been pulled off. Let's get into this here.
David Easterwood is a pastor here. He is also the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. So someone who claims to worship God, teaching people in this church about God, is out there overseeing ICE agents. Think about what we've experienced. The murder of Renee Good at the hands of ICE. A Venezuelan national shot by ICE. A 6-month-old baby who almost died as a result of ICE unleashing military-grade weapons on our community. How dare you claim to be a pastor of God and you are involved in evil in our community?
Do you think Jesus would be understanding?
We're about worship.
These folks.
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them?
No church had gathered for worship, which we do every Sunday.
So this is Don Lemon here to the left. He is interviewing the pastor, asking him, did you try to talk to the protesters here?
And we were interrupted by this group of protesters. Yeah. We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left.
So he's supposed to be there claiming that he is allegedly an ICE director. That's what they're saying, this pastor here. You guys get the point there. Brian said, leave them people alone at church. Yeah, this is the question some people have. They're like, well, they're not allowed to confront people at a place of worship. This is one of the things that the Trump administration has put forward. They said, remember, they said this about you can't go into these synagogues to do that as well. You can't protest against people at the place of worship. It's interesting, though, because we did have protests like that during the civil rights movement as well. So some people are saying, leave them alone, approach him at a different time. Or whatever. But apparently, this is interesting because now the Department of Justice, the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon, is now invoking the Ku Klux Klan Act to go against Don Lemon. They're really trying to charge him here. Like I said, I thought it was a joke at first, but because Don Lemon was there and he covered it, they're going after him. Now, I will say he's not the only journalist that was there. You guys know Status Quo News. They've been covering this since day one. I would say they're one of the first ones I saw covering the ICE raids. So it's not just Don Lemon. There are other people that are there, but they're going after him. And so I think the question that people ask is, why are they targeting him and not the other journalists that were there? Also, I saw the video earlier today. Midas Touch was also there on the ground in Minneapolis. Now, I'm not sure if they went into the church, but he wasn't the only journalist that was there covering in the church.
We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the wires or the mails in preparing for this event? Did anyone cross state lines to do this? All of those.
So what does that have to do with Don Lemon covering it though? And this is a scary time. And this is why I say, you guys, again, I'm pro free speech. My whole thing is I always pivot back to Julian Assange, right? I believe that journalists, like, you have the right to cover these stories. Whether people want them covered or not is another thing. But we are now entering into this realm where you could be targeted just for being there covering something that the DOJ is against. And again, why are they targeting him and not the other journalists that were there as well? And so I think that's the thing. It's really interesting. I've picked on Don Lemon a couple of times on the show. Over the past couple of months, it seems like he has moved in a way that I did not expect. Like, I feel like he's become more bold. Because when I show you what he said about Nicki Minaj, his response to her, I was like, oh boy, here we go. I feel like since he's left CNN and as a little bit of time has gone by, I feel like he's become more bold. Like, he's saying things that I know he would have never said on CNN, right? So let's continue on here.
Those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
Armin, I've just pulled up the Klan Act because this is the first time that I've heard this mentioned. This is a act that was passed in 1871, correction there, to combat the Ku Klux Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights, especially the Enforcement Act, which is known as the Force Act. So here's some of the information on screen. Would you mind breaking down for us, because we have just read the FACE Act and how this is an affinity to the FACE Act, an obvious and egregious demonstrable violation of the FACE Act, because they were entering a place of worship, harassing and threatening. We just played a video of a bearded man, who was threatening to attack the Christians that were worshiping there. So it seems like an obvious FACE Act violation. But the Klan Act here, it is on screen. First time I've heard it mentioned. Can you unpack this for us, Harmeet?
Yeah, the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes, and it goes back to the time when President Lincoln emancipated the slaves, and yet the southern states, Dixiecrats mainly, were refusing to give them equal rights. And in fact, that you had sheriffs and you had law enforcement harassing the newly freed slaves. So the Klan Act is a law that makes it illegal to terrorize citizens, to violate their civil rights, to get together and conspire to violate the civil rights. It is often used against law enforcement, but is now used against others as well. So whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge. We, in the federal law enforcement parlance, call this 241 and 242. Civil and criminal conspiracies. And so what the Biden administration did is, if three grandmas got together to pray outside an abortion clinic for the souls of the people inside, and including the unborn children, they would say, oh, that's not just a violation of the Klan Act, that's a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of women going in there to get abortions. And so we're going to add additional charges and punish that more and make it from a misdemeanor under the FACE Act to a felony under the Klan Act. And
so I wanted you to hear that part. That's wild, the Klan Act there. But notice what she did. Notice how she mentioned how the Biden administration used it. This is something I keep pointing to people, right? Everyone pay attention. It seems like, and you'll notice this when we get to that Whitney Webb story, it seems like the Trump administration, they have a way of using something that either was set in motion under the Biden administration or was done under the Biden administration and taking it to another level. This is what I've been saying. This is what I was telling you guys about the ICE stuff too. It's like they took things that were already set in motion and they expanded on it and made it even more wild and crazy, right? So Don Lemon did respond. Let's hear what he had to say here about this this charge that they're trying to pursue.
The MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this a assistant attorney general, I don't know, gosh, what's her name? It's something Hammett, Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea.
So this is the question. He's not a part of that organization. So if you're a journalist and you're not a part of the organization that you're covering that's protesting, are you still held to the same standard? And that's what the legal question I would say would be. Are you still bound by the same standard as the protesters if you are there as a journalist? And I think this is the question people want to have. Listen, there are a number of us that report things on the ground. I've been on the ground. I've covered protests. I've covered, I've covered speeches. I've covered rallies on the ground. Status Quo covers everything on the ground. Like if you look at Status Quo's channel, they've been covering all of these protests on the ground. Midas Touch also working along with them as well, covering things on the ground. So if this becomes the case that even as a journalist, you can't do this because of the rules that apply to the protesters, that really does change things, right? Now, I want to get to another part here, which I thought was interesting. The assistant attorney general was also on Glenn Beck's show. And I want you to hear what she said here. Listen to the question that he asked her.
If he was in violation, unless he was part of it, do you go after the journalist that's reporting it? Or do you view him as something that was not just reporting it?
Okay, well, I'm going to reserve comment on that specific fact pattern, but let's just take a hypothetical, okay? A hypothetical where a podcaster, once a news anchor, is deciding that he's learning of a crime in progress. It's a bank robbery, okay? And he's friends with the bank robbers and he sympathizes with them because he agrees with what they're going to spend the money on. So the bank robbers call him because they'd like some PR, because they think what they're doing is great, whatever. And you decide to go along and you know that the group of people you're with are breaking into a building and they're going to commit a crime inside and then you're going to stream it inside. That fact pattern is much more dubious than how you put it. And so I think we're investigating our facts. Mr. Lemon has put several hours of video on the internet yesterday saying a variety of things. And I would, if I were his lawyer, I would probably say, that maybe you should lawyer up before you do things like this.
So I'm putting this out there for everybody to hear because you see what's happening now, right? So Glenn Beck said, but does basically what I was asking, like, well, if he's there as a journalist, does that mean the same thing? So everybody needs to pay attention to what is happening here. She also said that he posted videos about this. So they're trying to say that he was inciting violence. But the thing is, that tells you that they're watching. That tells you that these people are watching YouTube media. They're seeing what's out there. Now, I say it again, somebody's watching me. So they're watching. You may never know it, but they're looking to see what's being said so they can figure out a way to counter it. Now, I want to get into this part here because this is where it gets kind of funny. Don Lemon has been going on a number of shows, I guess, to respond to this as well. And he had a hell of a response for Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj responded in this way: Don cocksucking Lemon is disgusting. How dare you? I want that thug in jail. He would never do that to any other religion. Lock him up. So you know what's interesting? She's one to talk. She's one to talk. You guys know Nicki Minaj. She go wherever the opportunity is. She's an opportunist. Her music career been on the downward spiral, so she had to find a way to remain relevant once again. And that's why she joins alongside with Turning Point USA and all that stuff to create that commotion. And then her sales go up. And, you know, she's not the queen bee in the rap industry anymore. Her big glory days come and then they went away. It happens to everybody, right? So, you know what was weird to me about this statement coming from her? There is a large portion of the LGBT community that supported Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj, that's something she was known for, loving the LGBT community. That was like her thing. But you see how she treats you, right? Anything to remain relevant. That's Nicki Minaj. 2, it's interesting that she says, I want that thug in jail. People could say that about her husband. People could say that about her brother. They're not in jail. The Hubs isn't in jail anymore. And I really believe, and I said this, that this is why she's hanging around the Trump administration like that, because she's trying to get some type of pardon. 3, Nicki Minaj herself did not come to the U.S. legally. It's not a secret. And I don't know why all of a sudden people are pretending like this is not a thing. So under the policies right now, under the Trump administration, Nicki Minaj would also be deported. And I believe that's part of the reason why she made this shift. She's looking out for herself. So for all the people who are clapping their hands and applauding Nicki Minaj, she don't care about you. She's going to try to get what she can get from the Trump administration. A couple years from now, she'll turn again. Whatever benefits her pocket. So Don Lemon did clap back at Nicki Minaj. And I thought this is funny. I've never seen him say this before, but Don Lemon said that Nicki Minaj is not a Black American. Listen to this.
Minaj is not a Christian. She knows nothing about a Christian. What she is a grifter. And instead of that Chucky doll, she should have had a pick-me doll on there, because Nicki Minaj is a pick-me. And she's not African American. I think she's from the islands. She is a Black woman, but she doesn't understand the African American struggle, so to speak. And if she did.
Oh, no. I was shocked that he said that. I was shocked it came from him. Because that now Don Lemon, oh my God. It's funny because when people said that about Kamala, Don Lemon was one of the people who defended it. But now Don Lemon has become a little bit more bolder, and he's saying that Nicki Minaj is not African American, not a Black American. What is happening? We are living in the Twilight Zone. I'm so sorry, guys.
American struggle, so to speak. And if she did, she wouldn't be doing this and saying this on Martin Luther King Day, on the Martin Luther King holiday of all days, putting that out. Nicki Minaj doesn't care about Black people. She doesn't care about gay people. Those are 2 of her biggest supporters and the people who make her rich. And if I was, if I am, as a Black and gay person, I'm not supporting her. And so if you're Black and you hear what Nicki Minaj is doing, and she's sitting on the stage with Charlie Kirk's widow, who Charlie Kirk, sadly, who should not have died. You have to, say that caveat the way that he did. It was uncalled for. However, he talked shit about Black people a lot. He said racist, bigoted things a lot. And she's cozying up to his wife and to his organization and to all of the other bigots in the MAGA movement. And now she is calling a gay man a cocksucker. That's homophobia. So if we were in the day where we bought records, I would be burning Nicki Minaj's records today. So I am so glad that I've never been a Nicki Minaj fan. I don't know her music. There's nothing on my playlist that's ever Nicki Minaj. And there isn't going to be, because she is an ignorant pick me, and I choose not to pick her.
I don't know what to say. I was shocked that he said that. So it sounds like even Don Lemon is choosing to delineate. It's funny. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Now, here's the kicker here, folks. To wrap all of this up, look at what the Minnesota Police Department is doing now. Even they are starting to change position. Listen to this. This is crazy. This is wild.
As the last 2 weeks, we as law enforcement community have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. When she became concerned about the rhetoric and the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone. In an attempt to record the incident, the phone was knocked out of her hands, prevented her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction. And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down.
So the Minneapolis, the police department here, Minnesota police, they are saying that an ICE agent pointed their gun at a police officer. And it's interesting, it's coming from them that this escalation, they're like, oh, this has escalated too much, because we all remember some of the things that they did during the George Floyd protests. So you guys, all of them are trained. Listen, the police and and ICE, they're all practicing IDF practices. Police are trained by the IDF. ICE is trained by the IDF. So, it's like, it's just interesting that it's coming from them, of all people. But this is where we're at now. So do I think the DOJ is really going to have anything against Don Lemon? Probably not. However, the way that they are moving, one has to be very careful. I will also reach out to, Jordan's usually pretty careful, but I will reach out to Status Quo as well, just to tell them be very careful, because again, like, they did pass that rule that you cannot go to a place of worship and protest inside a place of worship. And as a journalist, if you're following them to cover a story, are you held by the same rule? So I think this is something people need to pay attention to. But interesting that they are going after him and not the others who were there. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.